Hello, my name is Mohammed Bawabeid. I'm the Executive Director of the Muslim Research Center for Social Support Integration in London, Ontario. I've been working for almost 30 years now addressing family violence in collectivist communities and trying to come up with innovative strategies to respond to family violence in within collectivist cultural context. For many years now, I have been working as a broker between the Muslim community and Arab community, as well as anti-violence agencies in London, Ontario. And throughout this experience, I have been able to develop with a team that has been working with us at the Muslim Resource Center, a culturally integrative model to respond to family violence. And the culturally integrative family safety response model is actually about creating space for culturally based organization to be part of the solution in situations of family violence in particular. That would allow actually service providers to better understand the cultural context of families impacted by family violence within collectivist communities, but also it would allow to create a partnership with cultural communities or diverse communities to be part of the solution and not just really waiting until a situation of violence escalate and result to tragedies. So at the same time, the culturally integrated family safety response actually will train service providers to understand how they assess risk of family violence in a context of migration and culture. We're very happy that we have been working with the Arab Culture Center in Fredericton and Dr. Cathy Hotman at the University of New Brunswick to establish a new initiative that brings the Arab and Muslim community with the mainstream service providers or public services to work together to address family violence in the Muslim and Arab communities. And this project actually based on the culturally integrative model, and it allows, as I said, really, it's about really raising awareness within the Arab and Muslim community on family violence issues, but also helping public services to better understand how to work with Muslim and Arab women and families impacted by domestic violence effectively and also in a culturally meaningful manner. One of the challenges that Muslim and Arab families are facing when they face family violence, the fact that they don't trust the system, mainstream or public services, because family violence is considered as a family conflict, as a private issue. In many situations, many people don't believe in professional help or support. And that would put really women in particular at risk because they are not really asking for outside help. And what we really need to consider when we work with families or in particular women impacted by domestic violence or intimate partner violence, to understand traditional roles within the family. And also really to understand that the situation that the woman would go through may be fear of losing support of the community or maybe extended family if she would go and ask for outside help. So it's really important to keep women safe, but also at the same time engage with the family. Usually you will have someone at least within the family that you can talk with, or maybe within the community. I would really recommend to identify community members who can be really supporter, an advocate on behalf of this woman, and also like a bridge between the woman who needs help as well as the service providers. At the same time, I really also recommend to slow down the process. I know if there is imminent risk, so you have to act fast, and maybe you can maybe make some kind of intrusive intervention. But I think, if we slow down the process and step back a little bit, we will have enough room to maybe negotiate with different key players in the community to provide more support for the woman, but without alienating the family. That's really sometimes what would create more tension and lead to more problems, not just really for the family, but also really for the woman. So I think it's important for us to understand what are really the lived reality, the context of the women that we are serving in these communities. For domestic violence outreach worker, here are the things that you should really consider working with Muslim women or maybe Muslim and Arab women impacted by domestic violence. One thing to consider to differentiate between the nuclear family that is existing within Western societies, comparing with the extended family, which really means a woman who is coming from Muslim or Arab background, coming from a collectivist background, which really means it's the connection with the extended family, sometimes even the family back home or part of the family back home. So before you go and approach the woman or maybe the family, you need to take into account that the context of the family structure is different. So that's something that you take into account. The second thing, you should really look also into, as the woman, who, for example, within the extended family, that could be maybe supportive. Sometimes really very helpful to connect with someone in the family or in the extended family, but sometimes it could be risk and dangerous. But it's important to ask, and the woman will tell you what kind of support they need. Sometimes maybe even connecting with someone in their country of origin as a support. I'm saying that because most of the challenges that mainstream service providers would face working with Muslim and Arab women in particular, they don't maybe appreciate their fear of losing connection with their community if they would go out, if they share their stories regarding the abuse that they're experiencing. So it's important really to understand what are the dilemma that they go through, and then really trying to understand where they are at and provide the support that they need, and not necessarily project what you think necessarily they need. Just one thing to really, to make sure it's really correctly understood. I'm talking now in the context of early intervention, because we have enough room when the woman is safe. Of course, as I said at the beginning, if there is imminent risk, so you need to do what you need to do to make sure that the woman is safe. The other thing that we need to take also into account, the role of men. If the men are not really representing more risk to the woman and to their children, I think it's important to engage with them and not wait until they get charged and then provide them with counseling or support. It's important to engage with them separately from the woman. That would make things much easier for the woman, but also for the family and the men. The attitudes of many Muslim and Arab families, like many other families coming from a collectivist background, towards police or law enforcement is different. Most of the time, the experience with law enforcement in many countries of origins is negative. So then, because of that, keep in mind, many women, or maybe even men or families, would be very reluctant to ask to report to the police. So I think that's something really to take, important to take into account when working with Muslim and Arab families, and maybe to start with a bridge. Like, for example, now the Arab Culture Center in Fredericton can be like a bridge between, let's say, the police and this family or this woman, as well as, of course, other mainstream mandated services, including child protection or maybe women's shelter.
Many service providers who work in the Fredericton area are interested in learning more about everyday interactions with Muslims. So if I were to come to a Muslim home, what are some of the respectful practices that I should know about?
Actually, there is some tradition and customs you have to know about it. It's, first of all, when you get into the Muslim house, you have to address the head of the family, which is the father. Could be the father, the husband, to greet him, and you have to be waited until he introduce you to the woman. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to greet her. Okay.
But only after I'm introduced to her.
After he introduce you to the woman.
Okay.
Okay. One more thing, another thing is don't call the woman by her first name.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to call Mrs. Helmi, Mrs. Whoever the husband name or the father name.
Mm-hmm.
Third one is about when you get entering the house, you have to ask them if you can take off your shoes or not.
Okay.
Because some families, they may get embarrassed to ask the question. They feel, so it's very respectful to ask them.
Okay, so that some families want me to take off my shoes.
Some families, one of the rules at home is to take off your shoes out, especially in the Gulf area.
Okay.
All the Gulf area, you have to take off your shoes by the door.
Okay.
So you have to ask them, do I have to take off my shoes? If they said no, you can come in, it's okay. So it's their house. But if, because that sometimes when you get into the house, they may embarrassed, or they get how we said to him. So it's very respectful to ask them before you go.
Okay.
Shall I take off my shoes or not?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, are there things I should avoid talking about or saying so that I am respectful when I'm visiting a Muslim family?
The list is very long, of course. It is impossible to name them all. But I tell you, like the basic things. So first of all, we should not ask personal questions unnecessarily.
Okay.
I mean, if it comes in the flow of the conversation, maybe sometimes it's necessary to clarify something, but if it is not unnecessary, so avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, talking about sex or intimate parts of the body is a kind of taboo.
Okay.
So better not go there at all. Then third, I can think that the Arabo-Israeli conflict is a hot topic, and it brings a lot of hard feelings and heated debates. So it will be a good idea to avoid this topic in the discussions. All. Then, Islam, there are some terrorist groups carrying the name of Islam. But I want to clarify that Islam condemned this kind of groups. Islam is against terrorism, is against violence. And if there are any radical groups here or there, they do not represent our community, they do not represent our people. So please do not generalize this idea on us. There is also the question of niqab and hijab for the Muslim and Arab woman. It is a matter of personal choice. So regardless what the Sharia stipulates, it is always up to the woman to choose if she wants to have niqab or hijab or none. But it's totally up to her. Nobody can force her to do this or do that. The relationship between the woman and God belongs to her. She does what she wants, but she is responsible for it. Right. So I would also avoid talking to a woman, like referring to her as the weak link in the society, or as if she needs saving or something, because this idea is wrong. This does not reflect the truth. The woman in our society, in our culture, is respected, and she has all the rights as any other woman in the world. She is not weak. She is not waiting for somebody to save her. So let's bear this in mind when we talk to her.
Okay.
Also, I want to talk about a sensitive subject, about the LGBTQ community. This is a subject that should be avoided also, because many people will not discuss with you this topic.
Okay.
It's suffice to say that in many Arabic countries, this kind of people, of community, are prohibited. This, if somebody is identified as a member of this group, it can be punished by sometimes by capital punishment or by prison, or at least he or she would be shunned and shamed.
Okay.
So I would like the service providers to be aware of this advice and avoid this subject altogether.
Okay. So if I'm coming to visit a family, or if I have Muslim colleagues, Muslim and Arab colleagues in my workplace, is it appropriate? What are some of the appropriate ways to greet them? Like myself, I always want to shake people's hand. So can you give me some advice on appropriate ways of showing respect and greeting people?
Yes, actually shaking hands with the men Muslims, it's okay. But for some women, it's prohibited. She doesn't like to shake hands.
Okay, why is that, Imam?
I don't know, because it depends on how she grown up.
Okay.
It depends. Some families they do, some families they don't. But don't extend your hands until she permit or she do that first.
Okay.
So
okay.
I think you have to be careful with shaking hands, and standing up to greet a Muslim, it's a must, especially if there is older people. So you have
Okay.
to stand up and greet them as a respect.
Okay.
Okay. Of course, you can make a brief eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what else as advice? When seated, don't cross your leg.
Don't cross my legs.
Yes, exactly. And especially if there is older people.
And why?
It's a respect. As a respect, we
Okay.
don't cross our legs when there's my grandfather or grandmother with us in the living area or something like that. So as a respect for them, we don't cross legs.
Okay, okay, very interesting, thank you. So as our society becomes more and more diverse and more members of Muslim and Arab families are in our workplaces, and they may be our service providers, police, social workers, shelter workers, should an employer ask a Muslim employee if they want to pray during the workday, given that Muslims are required to pray 5 times a day? Should an employer ask if their Muslim employee wants to pray?
There are, as Fahim mentioned before, 5 prayers a day, and some of them are inevitably during the working hours.
Mm-hmm.
So if the prayer time comes while we are working, we don't really have to interrupt the work
Okay.
to do prayers, because we are allowed to postpone that a little bit after work, because work also is holy.
Okay.
Work also is a kind of prayer.
Mm-hmm.
So you do not interrupt the work, you wait until you have a chance to do your prayers. So the boss, the administrator,
Mm-hmm.
he can arrange for his people to have prayers later in the day. But it would be advisable if this boss is kind enough to dedicate a place for them to do their prayers,
Okay.
like a room or a small corner. It should be kept clean and decent for them to make prayers. So they do not interrupt work, but they should be allowed to have a chance to do their prayers decently.
Okay. Okay. Well, another question I have about workplaces is often, we have opportunities to either have a celebration or share a meal together. Are there things, or should I ask Muslim employees about dietary restrictions before I organize something like that?
I think so. You have, because we are not allowed to eat pork, pepperoni, or this kind of stuff. We always eat halal meat if it's there. I think it's better for you to, or otherwise you can avoid any meats.
Okay.
So you can go for cheese, tuna, whatever. So that will be fair.
Okay. And what about in terms of drinks? Are there any
No, we are
restrictions?
not allowed to drink alcohol.
So no alcohol.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And should I ask, or should I invite somebody to give me suggestions? Is that a good way to proceed, do you think?
You mean
Like if I have
the
a Muslim
events?
employee?
Oh yes, you can just take if there is any Muslim women or men in the institution you work for, you can just give him to help you to put the menu because I am inviting some Muslims. And what do you think that it's better for them to go to buy or to bring for the events. So
Okay.
she will help you and she will tell you exactly what to avoid.
Yeah, or at least you can notify them that this food contains pork, this before they give them the chance to know that I should avoid this plate and
Exactly.
take
Yeah.
pizza instead. But
Pepperoni.
at least do not put food on the table without any notifications like this. So it's only fair to let them know if it contains anything that's
exactly like we did with the allergy. You always nuts allergy, so you put some signs or on this plate there is it might contain nuts.
Right.
So the same concept.
Just give people information.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And it's up to them.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We want to thank all of the public service providers who submitted questions for us. These videos are a response to questions that came directly from public service providers in the Fredericton area.
And thanks for inviting us to provide all the information about our society. And if you need any further information, we would be love to answer the questions. And this is our contact. You can get back to us as the Arabic Cultural Center Association.
The Family Safety Program is an ongoing project, and we will continue working with the service providers and with interested institutions to improve and continue this effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.